Big shocker this morning. Dr. Rosalind Kwamboka Akombe has quit as commissioner of the IEBC 7 days before the date set for the repeat presidential poll. A damning statement sent from New York at 4 a.m. Kenyan time outlines her reasons for leaving. She says the election of October 26, as planned, cannot meet the expectations of a credible election, that IEBC has become a party to the current crisis and is under siege. Commissioners have become openly partisan. Senior secretariat staff are blatantly serving partisan interests. She says she cannot be part of such a mockery to an electoral integrity. What does her resignation portend for the IEBC? What impact, if at all, will it have on the repeat presidential election? As the crisis appears to deepen, what next for Kenya? Meanwhile, the raid at businessman Jimmy Wanjigi's residence in Muthaiga continues for the third day running. NASA leader Raila Odinga was at the home yesterday, and according to his advisor Salim Lone, the NASA leader spent the better part of the night there. He could still be there. We'll be following that, as well as the NASA demos that have now been suspended. Good morning. Welcome to Citizen Extra. My name is Fred Indimuli. We continue following events surrounding the general election of 2017 and now more specifically the current political crisis as we head up to the repeat presidential poll set for 26th of October. In a short while, we'll be looking at some of the things that Commissioner Akombe said in the last few hours, as well as in the past 1 week. We'll be discussing these issues with my panelists as well in studio. This morning, we're privileged to have David Kosing, MP South, Pokot South. Next to Bwana Kosing, we have Mwende Mwinzi, a former candidate for the in the Mwingi West parliamentary contest, as well as a political analyst. Senator Ledama Olekina from Narok, and political analyst Sandra Ochola. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Karibuni sana.
Thank you. Asante.
Well, let's start off with what Commissioner Akombe spoke to the BBC from New York yesterday. This is before she even sent the statement to Kenya, and this is what she had to say.
Right now to make any changes internally, because you have to have enough votes. The second aspect of it is a safety and security issue. I mean, you are aware that 9 days before the last election, our manager in charge of ICT communication, Chris Musando, was brutally murdered. That has never been resolved.
Your brother recently had to leave the country, is that correct?
Yes, my brother had to flee the country because he was getting a lot of threats. I was getting threats, and those threats extended to him.
What sorts of threats?
People were using words of calling him on WhatsApp and sending him messages and telling him, tell your sister to stop asking too many questions, tell your sister to relax about, senior staff being sent home, or you will be mishandled. Go.
Did you feel there were any threats to your life?
Absolutely. I mean, I have never felt the kind of fear that I felt in my own country. I have traveled around the world. I have lived in various countries. So if you get such messages and you've seen your own staff get that and be murdered, you will really be suicidal to think that nothing would happen to you.
Where were these threats coming from? The governing Jubilee coalition or from NASA?
I always see possibilities of threats coming from anybody because sometimes it's opportunistic.
You mentioned that the changes that the opposition were asking for, they haven't been implemented at the Electoral Commission. Can you just expand on that a little bit more for us?
My sense really is that there was a period of time in which we could be able to make meaningful concessions that would have allowed NASA and Jubilee to play on a level playing ground in this election. But that time has lapsed. That time is over.
Rosalind, I'll ask you two pointed questions. Is Chairman Chebukati an able leader of the Commission?
Chairman Chebukati is a very well-meaning person. He has a temperament to be able to be a leader, but he's a leader who is under siege in the Commission.
But is he able? Well-meaning, yes, but is he able?
I mean, really, I think for me, it is about the support base that he just doesn't have within the Commission.
That is not really an endorsement.
Well, if he was much more firmer, I think probably we could have gone much far. But, there are aspects of his character that are helpful in a situation like we have now. But there are times you just need firmness to be able to move on.
will Kenya and the Commission be ready to conduct credible elections on the 26th of October?
I was going to say that if it is to conduct an election, yes, the Commission can hold an election. Would it be a credible election? Absolutely not. There is a very high likelihood that the mistakes that some of the presiding officers made during the last election will be repeated. If you are dealing with an election in which at least half of the country is not going to be participating in, could you consider that the environment for having credible election exists? It does not.
Has the NASA coalition, the opposition of Mr. Raila Odinga, has that party been putting some of your staff under pressure in some areas in the country?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's unacceptable to have any of our staff across the country being attacked by NASA supporters. That is absolutely unacceptable. But you
do realise that by giving this interview, you will give them credence when they say that the election process will not be fair. You do realise that they will use this interview to justify scrapping the election, or at least getting rid of the chairman of the Electoral Commission.
You see, my personality requires that I speak the truth. But there are also aspects that I cannot live with. I cannot live with an election that is never going to be a credible election. So if it's misunderstood by Jubilee to be me trying to delegitimize the process, that is the truth. We have to get to a point whereby we are able to speak the truth, whether that truth hurts Jubilee or whether that truth hurts NASA. But it is the truth.
Do you envisage yourself going back to Kenya in the foreseeable future?
No.
So you are in exile, in effect?
I mean, I don't see myself being able to, I don't feel safe enough to be able to go back home. I haven't been feeling safe being there. And I don't feel safe.
That's very sad.
No, it is sad. I mean, it is sad, but this is not what I ever thought it was going to end up being as a job.
Rosalind Akombe, Dr. Rosalind Akombe, one of the former commissioners at the Kenyan Independent Electoral Electoral Commission, has left. She's now in the United States. Supposed to be in Dubai, where she was overseeing the printing of ballot papers and that kind of thing, but she's left.
Yes, Rosalind Akombe speaking to the BBC yesterday, just before she sent out this statement, which reached Kenya at 4 a.m. Kenyan time. Now, just before she left Kenya earlier this week, while supervising the training of election staff in Siaya, she spoke to the media. Let's listen to what she had to say.
Our part as the Electoral Commission, as the IEBC, is to do every technical preparation for this election, which is what we have done. We know that there are a lot of outstanding political issues out there. Those political issues have to be handled in a political manner. We cannot use an electoral process and expect the Commission to be the one addressing all the political issues that this country faces. Political issues have to find a political solution. As a Commission, our job is to do the technical preparations for the elections, and we expect that the rest of the Kenyans will come together, the leaders will come together, the religious leaders, the business community will come together to address the political questions that you're asking about participation, because participation, withdrawal is a huge issue, and it cannot be an issue that can be handled only by the Commission. It's a political issue that needs a political solution. We cannot always seek political and we cannot always seek legal and electoral solutions to issues that are purely political. That is a political issue, and it has to be held or handled in a political manner.
That could well be, or rather could well have been her last public statement before leaving Kenya, before sending out this statement, which she has signed as Commissioner IEBC. Yet she says she's leaving her place in the Commission. Let's now head to the anniversary towers here in Nairobi, where Sam Ogina is currently. A very good morning to you, Sam. Very many questions being asked now that Rosalind Akombe has left the IEBC. Many people wondering, is Chairman Wafula Chebukati there? What is happening at the IEBC headquarters?
Well, Freddie, it is actually a shocker statement that greeted the country Wednesday morning. That resignation by Dr. Rosalind Akombe, the Commissioner of IEBC, actually someone who had projected herself as the mouthpiece defender of the Commission on various issues here at the Anniversary Towers, that is the headquarters of the Electoral Commission. Now, that statement by, or rather the resignation by Dr. Rosalind Akombe, of course, throwing a spanner in the works, just coming 7 days to the election. Commission. Of course, what we know and understand is now the commissioners of IEBC right now hold up in a meeting, and we'll be expecting a statement from the IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati, of course, flanked by the rest of the commissioners, just to try and give the position, an official position of the commission on how the commission will be, of course, taking the resignation of one of its commissioners, and how will it proceed with the election that is coming just 7 days from today. Of course, Rosignation Akombe was actually very key, fundamentally steering the training of presiding officers in the country. She was actually also responsible for training of master trainers. These are actually individuals who are now training the presiding officers and deputy presiding officers in various counties, as it were. And in her statement that she sent earlier today morning, she actually pointed out that the disenfranchisement of actually the training of the presiding officers and deputy presiding officers really does not augur well with the preparation of the election. And something else also that she's raised is the alleged changing of technology and rushed training of presiding officers in some areas, saying that this really does not portend for a credible election as it was. So essentially, Freddie, what we'll be doing, or actually what we'll be monitoring here at the Electoral Commission, is the official position by the Electoral Commission to be addressed by Wafula Chebukati, the chairman of the Electoral Commission. How will they proceed from now onwards, given that the resignation of Rosignation Akombe actually comes just 7 days to the election, and also paints a bad portrait of the country's political atmosphere, and also the preparation of the Electoral Commission, as it were, actually poking holes in the preparation of IEBC to hold a credible election, and also just actually with the rider saying that if the election proceeds as it is 7 days from today, then it actually lays ground for nullification of the election. So various questions actually arising from her statement. Maybe those are some of the questions that we'll be putting to the Electoral Commission, and actually, to be specific, the chairman of the Electoral Commission. How are they going to address some of the issues? Are they genuine issues that have been that are arising from the resignation of Rosignation Akombe, or some of these issues maybe just issues of maybe having a bad taste in the mouth? So of course we'll be looking at her statement holistically, and also just putting all these questions and matters arising from her resignation to the Electoral Commission once that address actually occurs here at the Electoral Commission. But as it stands right now, the Commission hold up in a crisis meeting of some sorts. The resignation also just putting, or rather bringing to forth the divisions that have been spoken about in the public, now coming out clearly, the divisions within the Commission and the commissioners, as it were. Freddie?
Thank you, Sam. You've just said that the commissioners are holed up in a meeting. Is that happening at the Anniversary Towers or elsewhere? And are all the other commissioners present at that meeting?
Well, we cannot ascertain for sure if all the commissioners are present in that particular meeting, but that can be only an assumption, given that a decision or a statement that is to be issued by the commission should be actually a statement by the commissioners that will be binding all the commissioners on the way forward, and also just a response to the statement by Dr. Rosignation Akombe. So as it is an assumption that it's actually the whole commission meeting, as it were. But of course, from our sources that we have been able to try and actually reach out, they've been busy, the airlines quite busy, of course, saying that they are holed up in a meeting. At least 3 of the commissioners that we've been trying to reach out to saying that they are actually holed up in a meeting as it is right now, and probably we will be able to ascertain that when that official statement comes out. Freddie?
Thank you, Sam. Sam Ogina there, reporting live from Anniversary Towers, the headquarters of the IEBC, whose one commissioner has declared that she has left the commission. That's Rosignation Akombe. She sent a statement. It reached Kenya at 4 a.m. Kenyan time. It's what we are talking about. It's a big shocker today. But before we even get down to discussing this, some other big news is happening for the 3rd day running. Police have continued with the siege with this raid at the home of businessman Jimmy Wanjigi at Muthaiga. We do understand the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga went to that home yesterday night. He could still be there. Let's now link up with our reporter Hassan Mugambi reporting from Muthaiga for the latest from that end. A very good morning, Hassan. What can you tell us from Muthaiga?
Well, a very good morning to you too, Fred. What I can tell you from now is that the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga is still holed up in this particular house belonging to Jimmy Wanjigi after he made his way here yesterday, just demanding that the police officers who were continuing with that particular that operation that was the day-long operation that happened yesterday to stop it and get to obey the court order that had been sought by Wanjigi's lawyer, led by Senator James Orengo. They actually came and pinned it at the entrance of this property after being restrained from gaining entry here. So they pinned that court order there. We're waiting for him. He will be coming out to speak to us anytime from now, and he has been here since the time that he came here to make that confrontation with the law enforcers. But as you can see right behind me is that entrance, and a few ladies who have already showed up here are actually just making consultations here and there. We have seen Rarier, the Member of Parliament, who is also a lawyer, and we also have seen Chris Omalwa, who came here earlier on and spoke to us, saying that the move by Raila Odinga to be holed up in this house for that long was as a result of detention and not on his own will. But he will be coming out and he will be telling us that whether or not he was detained here as claimed by Wamalwa, or he actually was here on his own volition. But then again, we are yet to see to actually get to quantify also the extent of damage. We saw officers in videos recorded by some of the family members that we got hold of yesterday. We saw officers just pounding doors inside this house. So we are yet to gain entrance, but we will be seeking to do that and just show you what exactly was transpiring yesterday.
Hassan, just before I let you go, I'm looking at an email sent by Salim Lon, advisor to the NASA flag bearer Raila Odinga. He says, yes, Odinga is still there. Some say that he has been told he can leave, but his safety cannot be assured. And that's a question I want to ask, because this email also indicates that Raila Odinga is there with his daughter. Is that the case? Have the police said anything about Odinga's presence there? Does he have his security detail with him?
Yes, he has his security detail with him. We have seen all his vehicles that actually follow his entourage here. They are here, and a few of supporters who have also showed up at this compound, and leaders also. And as whether or not he was actually detained, as you're saying, is a question that he is coming. He's going to come out and get to answer that. But we haven't spoken to the officers. The police also left this place in obedience of to the court order that was issued yesterday, seeking or asking them rather to stop the operation, and also restraining them from arresting him should they find him.
Thank you, Hassan. Hassan Mugambi there reporting live from outside Jimmy Wanjigi's residence in Muthaiga. Of course, we do understand the police have left after more than 48 hours, a raid that took that long. They were still not able to arrest Jimmy Wanjigi. Raila Odinga, the NASA presidential candidate, is there inside the home of Jimmy Wanjigi. We do understand he was there from 7:45 p.m. yesterday. He's still holed up there. We're hoping and expecting that he will address the media immediately after leaving there, probably in the next hour or so. We'll be heading back there for that update. Back in studio, my panel grew bigger. I had introduced my panel, but I think it's only fair if I introduce them again. On the panel this morning, we have David Kosing, MP Pokot South, Mwende Mwinzi, former candidate for the Mwingi West parliamentary contest, now a political analyst, Senator Ledamo Lekina from Narok County, Sandra Ochola, political analyst, and now joining the panel, James Jikal, MP Seme. Good morning, nakaribu sana. Back to this issue of the resignation of Rosignation Akombe from the IEBC. She raises quite a number of questions here, but one thing in the entire statement, she uses capital letter word once, and that's the word credible. Let me read that sentence. We need the commission to be courageous and speak out that this election as planned cannot meet the basic expectations of a credible, in capital letters, of a credible election. That is where we're starting this conversation this morning. What does it mean that one of the commissioners, 7 days, decides to resign? Let's start with you, Binaca.
Fred, in answering that question, we need to look at the context. The context of this election that we are going is that NASA has made or have made a very clear pronouncement that the election shall not happen on 26th. Let us not forget that basis, and that they are willing and ready to subvert the election. Let us begin from there. And therefore, whatever Akombe has done, which is very unfortunate, you know, it's like your house is burning, and as a mother, as Akombe is, as a mother in this country, that you cannot run away from the house which is burning. You should actually help the house to heal. And therefore, when you are bringing about credibility, NASA has already said very clearly, we will make it impossible for this election to happen. And even before she raised that question of credibility, if you look at the statement which I have read, she's saying that there has been some conflict and threats of IEBC officials. And she named the places. She named Akombe County, she named Kisumu County, and this is very clear. She named Nairobi and Siaya. These are NASA zones.
So you fully blame NASA for her resignation?
Absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely. And in fact, she even said herself that NASA as a contributor is a big contributor in terms of her resignation, because she was there. She was in Nyanza when doing the training, and the NASA people never made it impossible for her to carry her own roles. It is NASA.
Okay. Mwende Mwinzi, you agree with Binaca Singh that NASA is to blame for Commissioner Akombe's resignation?
I completely agree. In fact, all you need to do is refer to paragraph 4 of her letter, where she very clearly articulates, I think she says, you know, it's unacceptable for members of the public. In fact, even in her interview, she talked about NASA supporters attacking IEBC officials. So she's not only fearful for her safety, but that of her staff who are in the field. And, you know, the areas that she zoned in on, Nairobi, Siaya, Kisumu, Homa Bay, I think she added Bungoma, those are, as we all know, NASA strongholds. But I think more importantly, there's a few things that we need to take into consideration here. Whereas it's her right to resign on whatever grounds she finds necessary, safety, of course, being, you know, the chief concern here. Her resignation does not really in any way impact the elections. She's one official. IEBC is still an institution. It has the quorum. I think, without a doubt, we will conduct elections on the 26th. The elections will be credible. It will be a fair and transparent process.
Based on what are you saying? Why are you saying? Okay, because looking at this statement, and this is a commissioner of the IEBC who's been actually working on the process.
But it's also an individual opinion. I think, you know, the rest of them have not spoken. I think we need to be patient and wait to hear an official statement from the rest of the officials.
And that statement is coming in a short while.
Yes, it is coming.
We do understand the statement. Of course, the IEBC has to give a statement with regard to this.
It is coming, but we also, I think, need to look at her. You know, Rosignation Akombe and her role. You know, whereas in the clip that you showed, she talks about, you know, political processes have to have political solutions. She, I think, has played a behind-the-scene role. I would like, I think many are speculating as to whether she is the person, when NASA keeps on making references, our person in the IBC. Many people have speculated that perhaps Rosiglin Akombe is that person. It's odd then that she would turn around and blame NASA. Bottom line is we know that they're the people that, that's the group that she has squarely put the responsibility on.
Okay.
And it's in line with their attempt to discredit this whole process and disrupt the country.
Let's listen from the senator from Narok County. Do you agree with your two colleagues on the panel that NASA is to blame? And by NASA, it means the kind of anti-IEBC demonstrations that you've been carrying out up until Monday this week, that those are to blame for Commissioner Akombe's resignation?
Absolutely not. I think it is very important for us to speak the truth. I listened to her interview on the BBC, and the key thing that she raised was the issue of credibility versus the ability. When she was asked whether the IEBC as a commission was able to conduct the election, she said yes. However, the credibility of that election, there's no point of us misleading the public. People are listening, and Kenyans are very intelligent people. They will be able to deduce the meaning. There's nowhere she said that IEBC was infiltrated by NASA, as what my colleagues want to suggest here. I think it's important for us to look at the context of her resignation, what she raised as a concern. It is very clear in everyone's mind right now that IEBC is under siege. And I will not be surprised when I see other commissioners resigning, because Akombe clearly stated that there's an issue, there are a lot of changes coming in place. Technology is being changed. I think she also talked about the issue of rushing the training of the POs. There's so many things which are not in place. So, and she emphasized on the fact that it is important for us to speak the truth. And she spoke the truth. She stood by what she believed in. So I think it is wrong for us to blame one part of the coalition. NASA has been raising concerns about the readiness of IEBC to be able to conduct the elections. In my view, I think the 60 days which were given, we spent a lot of time going back and forth in terms of the issues that we raise for them to be addressed. If those issues were addressed earlier on.
Would you, for example, turn it around and blame Jubilee for Akombe's resignation?
In my view, I would blame IEBC as an institution because it allowed outside forces to be able to control it.
Okay.
And I think the outside forces here, I would probably say Jubilee being in government must have played a key role in ensuring that the environment is not conducive enough for the institution, for the independent institution to be able to perform its tasks.
Okay, let's listen to probably more a political voice. Sandro Chola, political analyst. Of course, when you talk to either NASA or Jubilee supporters, they'll blame each other for anything, even a cup of water or, that pours or a glass that breaks. But do you think both are to blame, or do you think this is a totally, it's just an IEBC problem?
It's an all-round problem, and I think for Akombe, she underestimated the demands of the job or overestimated her ability to deliver in that job. And if you read her statement all through, she quotes politics all the while, and forgetting that the job in itself is very political. Right from the moment she was appointed, it spells politics. And so those are the things that she should have expected. And reading through her statement this morning, I also realized that to a large extent, we underestimate the abilities of our institutions in terms of them delivering, in terms of our contribution to these institutions, standing for what they are. And so my misgiving in what she has done, I think she lacked wisdom in her decision. Wisdom, from my perspective, would have been, given the time frame that we have, there are certain things that are not right within the IBC. We accept. Our institutions are never perfect. And even the perfect election that we are looking for does not exist. Fine, there are certain challenges that we are facing as a country, as an institution, even as an individual there. But if it is about change technology, what else can we do to ensure that we have an election come to, October 26th? If it is the training of IBC officials, what can we do under these tough circumstances to move forward? If it is about threats to her life, if it is about sabotage of the election, as what she has said happening within
those are not reasons enough for someone to actually say, I can no longer do this job?
No. I'm not belittling.
You've just been listing them and
yes.
saying she should not.
I'm not saying that she should not.
Yes.
Was there an alternative to it, to resigning? Is it possible, for example, to say, because the job that I have been given within this docket, I am not able to do it given the pressures that we have. Can I take up something? Can I take up something else? If it is about rushed trainings, can we then hire more people to do the training so that we are achieving our purpose? This is not to belittle what she has said. My issue is her decision was rushed, and perhaps there could have been other ways of addressing it besides her resignation.
Dr. James Jikal, on the 7th paragraph of this statement by Rosalina Akombe, that's where she lists some of the issues bedeviling the IEBC and the process leading up to the repeat presidential poll. But on her first sentence, which I read, she says the biggest problem is we need the commission to be courageous and speak out. That probably they know all these things are the problem, but they're just not saying it. They're allowing the country to go into a process knowing fully well they are not able to do the job. And it's the entire commission, don't you think?
You know, I was here with you last week and I said one thing. I'm amazed. As you said, I'm a doctor and I'm to a large extent guided by the realities of life. That if you lie, things don't work. And that goes for everything in life. But there's a feeling in politics that if 1 million people say that water is petrol and one person says no, then that water will actually become petrol. Now that's where we are. Akombe's resignation shows the basic problem we have. The basic problem is IEBC. Did it in the first instance do the first election on 8th correctly? It did not. It did not follow its own procedures. And after that, then politics overswamping it because there is pressure from either side. And they don't have the courage to say, this is it. Akombe mentions one place that they are working, I listened to her early this morning, and she was saying they are working in an environment where decisions are being made by voting and not by facts. So if you have in that commission, I don't know how people are aligned there, people aligned in political life, then they will not look at facts of the case. She also said that she finds it will not be possible to have a credible election. And credibility, actually, when you listen to her, had two elements. Elements that the people who will participate in the elections, the politicians, the different parties, will they view the election as credible? That is one element. The other element, will they, inside, as a commission, be able to deliver it credibly? And he mentioned that she wished sometimes that Chairman Chebukati was much stronger, I would push things. Now, what then do you get from that? That within IBC itself, there is tension even before you get the view of people outside. So in my view, Akombe is looking in a situation where she thinks, from inside, we cannot make this thing happen. Yes. From outside, we are under pressure and under threats. So what does she do? She leaves. Now, we must go back to the simple thing. We said at the beginning, before we went to elections in August, that this is how it should be done. We even designed forms. We even said how it would be transmitted. Now, when these things were put to test in the court, they failed. And something has amazed me also, that even, let's take our colleagues, the Jubilee side. Initially, they were blaming the court. But if you look at this thing, I want to take a very simple thing. And if we take simple things, then we get there. The forms that were used to transmit were the forms themselves were doubtful. And then I want to give a very simple example. If I now showed you 100 shillings note, it's written on it 100, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But if you check and you don't find the governor's signature on it, and you don't find the watermark, is that number still valid as 100 shillings?
Okay.
It is not. But our argument has always been that those numbers, the numbers are the only important. How they are done is not the issue. So let me just say again, it is that basic fact that we need as a country to allow IBC to do its job. And finally, let me say on this one, when all is said and done in this country, whatever happens, the party or the persons or the people running the government who have sworn under oath to protect the people and the processes and the laws and the institutions of Kenya will take the blame.
Okay. Binaca Singh, yes. The issue that's coming out from what Dr. Nyikal says and what this whole paragraph that starts with the lack of courage in speaking out at the IEBC is that probably we are not being honest with ourselves. That this probably the issues with developing us are so obvious, but we've decided because of our political allegiances or expediency, we are going to just black it out and not look at it. She's listed some of these things here. Last-minute instructions on changes in technology, electronic transmission of results, training of presiding officers being rushed for fear of attacks from protesters, and the blame goes both ways, according to her. Commissioners and staff being intimidated by political actors and protesters. Secretariat staff and commissioners serving partisan political interests. So it's not just one-sided. It means the secretariat and the commission itself is split between NASA and Jubilee. Legal advice skewed to fit partisan political interests. Yes? And that's why she says they have endless legal cases, including the one that you presented in court, Binaca Singh. And she says IBC is losing most of them because their legal advice is already skewed politically. Don't you think that these are things that even we as Kenyans can see? They are rather obvious, and we've been discussing them all through. It's only that none of these political actors want to accept that this is true.
You see, my brother Indimuli, we are not living in a certain planet which is not Kenya. We are living in Kenya. And in fact, there are so many questions which are being raised now. Number one is, why did she resign now? You know, isolating, for example, a resignation statement like this one and discussing it as if there is no background will also be fatal to us. And we need to ask ourselves these critical questions. Why is it now? Who is she speaking on? Is she speaking on whose behalf? There are many questions which my colleague raised earlier that maybe, you know, NASA used to say we have our person in IEBC. Is she one of that person? And in fact, going back to even where she was working, you know, in terms of UN, who was she working with? She was working with Salim Lone. Who is Salim Lone? Salim Lone is advisor to Raila. So what is going on? There are so many things that are likely to come. And let me even pick from my colleague here. From NASA direction, that is Olekina. Olekina says there are some things which are likely to come. What do they know that we don't know as a country? Let me tell you, we will go back to what NASA has been keeping on saying, that we will do anything to subvert the election. And that is why I went to court. And I said in my petition, how can somebody be allowed to break the law? As now, it has now crystallized that they are aiming at breaking the law, sabotaging the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya that requires that the election should be done within 60 days of this nature. They are sabotaging the Supreme Court order that said you go for election in 60 days. They are sabotaging the whole process. And then in the Muli, and time will attest to what I'm saying today to the people of Kenya. Once election is done on 26th, they will come to court after 26th and raise those issues I'm talking about. They will raise issues on legitimacy. They will raise issues of
Are they raising the issues even before the election?
These issues are there, but who is creating? They're NASA creating. They will raise and say, and what are they aiming at? They are aiming to block those counties, 4 counties from voting. They are doing it. Who is sabotaging? It is NASA. In fact, she's speaking and telling us the truth about what's going on. So I'm asking, and we're asking ourselves as Kenyans, should we allow certain individuals, a section of Kenya, some few people, to support the process and then come back to court later and seek reliefs. Look at it this way in the Muli and the people of Kenya. Who went to court to challenge the last election? It's NASA. It's very clear. They went to court. They were given relief by court. Say, look, you know what? That election was not conducted properly, so go back. So the person who sought relief is trying to confuse the process, and is the one. In between, they say, no, I don't like it. And when he sees that the law is not working for him, he's going back to the public and say, don't vote. Even now, he's reading even credibility issues on Akombe. Akombe said in her interview that, there will be issues of credibility. Why? Because she believes, if you go back to what she said, that half of the country will not vote. How do we know that? She's already been told. They are aware. They want to support this process so that the election does not happen on the 6th and go back to court and try to challenge.
Before I come to Bonde, I will allow the Senator to
let me say this. How can that happen in the Muli? Where are we going? Okay. Why should we allow saboteurs to enjoy rights? How are those rights? How are they rights?
Senator.
It shocks me to hear my colleague trying to suggest that we know what is happening.
Absolutely.
What do we know?
You know.
I think at this time, really, it is a little bit ludicrous for us to be looking at every situation as if it is being controlled by certain forces. Akombe had a right to resign. She herself, under her own volition, came out and said the situation there will not allow me to deliver a credible election. I think we ought to read deeply in what she meant by that. There are so many things which are happening here. There are so many court cases which really have no basis. We all watch this. We saw when IEBC lawyers could not even explain simple things as what happens when you are given 6 ballot papers and you go and vote. You only choose to vote for the president. What happened to the rest? I think the biggest problem we have at the moment is this. This country is highly divided. And there are many cases which will be decided in the court. We have 3 institutions that are supposed to hold a country together, which is the judiciary, the legislative arm of government, and also the executive. It is wrong for one arm of government and for members of parliament to just proceed and do what their leaders are telling them to do. I think it behooves us to use the mandate that we were given by the people to be able to represent them. Okay. Akombe clearly stated one thing, and I want to repeat this thing, because it is important for us to speak the truth. She spoke the truth. Let her not be criticized. I know my colleague here talked about her decision to quit lacking wisdom. Define wisdom. If, in my view, I feel like I cannot be able to deliver. We know very well that the job she had, she was working at the UN. She took a 70% pay cut. This is public information. I didn't call Akombe and she told me I took a 70% pay cut. It is written all over. So she wanted to do good for her country. And as we sit here and as we speak to Kenyans, we have to be alive to the fact that we have a serious problem. There is a case which is going to be heard from tomorrow in terms of the Ekurwe Court decision. We know yesterday the Supreme Court repeated this very clearly. They had done so in 2013 in the case of Aramat versus Meitame Olelempaka, in the sense that the Supreme Court decision is all lower courts, apart from the Supreme Court decision, are bound to that decision. So we know very well that maybe even the High Court decision, it is not that it has to be investigated. What do we know? This is common sense. Okay.
But looking at it politically, and I know you speak for Jubilee, are you therefore saying that because your colleague Binaca Singh says this is the NASA plan to ensure there are no elections, are you now admitting as Jubilee that NASA's plan is working out, that yes, and probably it will continue and come 26 there will be no election?
No, I disagree that there won't be any elections, but I do agree that NASA has clearly been, they've been the architects of chaos. And they've had a plan. They've had a plan that they're systematically implementing, and the crescendo. And they've articulated it. I mean, we're not putting words in anybody's mouth. You've heard various officials, starting with the head of NASA, saying there will be no elections. They've held public rallies that are saying the same. Manzo the other day said even in Makueni.
Because now my question is, how does it tie, that no election, does it tie to Rosalind Akombe's resignation? Are you saying now it's crumbling? And
that's what they're trying to do. Is that the whole thing has been about dismantling IBC's credibility from the very start. I think that they didn't expect the Supreme Court ruling to go as it did. Let's not forget a very important point, which is that the Supreme Court, in its detailed ruling, did not hold a single IEBC official culpable of any crime. Okay? Rosalind Akombe, if you listen to any of the prior press statements that she's had, she's talked about the credibility. She's talked about the preparedness of the IBC. She's talked about the fact that there will be an election on the 26th, and she believes that it will be a credible, fair and transparent election. When we talk about credibility, though, and I said this earlier, this is just her personal opinion, let's look at Rosalind Akombe as an individual. How credible is she? While she was making all those press statements on, the preparedness and, the country moving in the right direction, and calling on, the politicians to solve whatever issues they had separately and to leave IBC to conduct its technical mandate, she was all the while behind the scenes transporting her family one by one to the US.
I would do that as well.
Okay?
I would do that.
No, I don't have a problem with it. It's her right. The only issue I have with it is she was doing it under the guise of safety. Which is the first thing you should consider.
Which
is what I didn't interrupt you, my brother. Which is what her letter actually focuses most on. She talks about safety, 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 safety. So she took her mother, she took her family, she took her brother, all because she believed that it was going to be safe.
Are you doubting her genuineness in doing so?
Well, I mean, the rest of us are here. We're safe. The only areas that have chaos are the areas that she's mentioned, and she doesn't necessarily have to live there. I'm not saying that she doesn't have the right to seek political asylum for her family.
Sandra,
but is this really the reality of Kenya? Is Kenya on fire? Not so.
On that issue of safety, do you think that yes, there could be a safety concern for commissioners of the IEBC at this time?
Yes and no. Yes, because given what we saw happening to Msando, and with the no side of the political divide, and this we must stress, no side of the political divide held to blame for that matter. I think it's something that is still ongoing, and also because of the politicized nature of the job that we have. Indeed, yes, but then I say no as well, because as we also know that, and with politics in our country, we've seen these incidences where people make claims, people disappear, kidnap themselves. So it's a yes and no situation, and it depends on us going through the legal processes and interrogating if indeed what she said was...
If you were in a position and you received threats, because she has said she received threats directly to her and directly to her family, and she told the BBC, I'm just quoting the interview by BBC, that she was told she would be msandoed yes. How would you react to that?
Naturally, I'd be shocked. I'd report it to the police station. Exactly. I'd ask for more, given my position, I'd ask for more security. And ensure that, given what is happening on the ground, and make sure that it's not politicized to a point where it's being made as a reference to what is going on in the country. And borrowing from what I mentioned before, for me, wisdom in this instance will have made her realize that it is because of IEBC, and of which she was in the front line. She was one of the most vocal people in the IBC. Because of that IBC, we are here where we are today. Okay. Wisdom, that will have been the first. The second wisdom will have been given with that knowledge, knowing that it was because of IBC, the institution you worked with, and you playing a very important role there. How are you going to address this situation moving forward, as opposed to leaving the country vulnerable to what we are currently witnessing? Wisdom, again, will have been that as you are leaving, you let people understand what it is exactly that you mean by credible, because everyone is talking credibility, but no one is telling us exactly what will define a credible election under the circumstances. And the question for me I'm asking, will it only be credible if it's held in all 290 constituencies? Will it only be credible if election officials are trained under the circumstances? So I maintain she did not exercise wisdom in that decision.
Okay, Dr. James Nyikal, the issues raised here, and we're just about to go on a break in a short while. Okay, just react to what...
Let's start by saying that NASA has all along from the beginning been raising issues, and therefore by that argument they are hell-bent on making sure that this election does not go on. The truth of the matter is, NASA has been raising certain points, things should be done in the right way. Now, if you have not corrected those things, you've not done the right way, NASA does not stop.
Even as you continue, if the question of credibility is brought up, and even looking at her statement, she has blamed NASA quite a bit as well. The protests, attacks on IBC staff in Mumias, Bungoma, Homa Bay, Kisumu. This is NASA. Issues of threats and the influence from outside.
Issues of threats? Let me handle that.
Yes.
By who? From NASA? No, let me handle that. I can handle that. I can handle that.
She clearly said it. In fact, even in the
and her life and the
listen to it again.
Let's have some
from
order.
Her mouth.
What's iking Olekina?
Please, Bonakosin. Threats from protesters against IEBC staff. Protesters we've seen so far from NASA. Do you think that if at all we fail to have a credible election, that NASA could be blamed directly, that you caused that?
Yes.
Correct.
Let's go back to the basics. Life is full of, it's just about basics. Life doesn't even have yes and no. There's nothing in life that yes and no. You either have a yes or you have a no. If you're doing yes and no, you are indecisive and you are not using facts as available. The facts are this. When the elections took place, we were very happy with the elections. But immediately the tallying started, even the process of election and everything, we didn't raise any issues. But when the tallying and the counting started, we started to see even things that were being put on TV started to look odd. Things that even mathematically, a high school mathematician will say, hey, these figures, how come they're just the same? So we were doubtful. Then when the results came and we raised the issues, we were Jubilee and everybody said, go to court, go to court, go to court. We went to court. And we still said, there are issues. And we raised those issues. The court examined the issues. And the court found, yes, there are issues with processes that led to the results that we have. And to that extent, annulled the results. Then we are now saying, but they found nobody culpable criminally. Now, in management, changes are not made only on criminal basis. If there is a feeling that officers or persons that are responsible are either not capable or not doing the job work, there will be no crime in that, but they can actually be asked to step aside while work is done. This was mine. This was mine.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to take a break.
This was mine. Let me just
take a break and we'll come back.
This was just mine.
Dr. James Nyikal, we'll come back.
This country has shown
it is time for a break and we'll have to take that break. When we come back, remember, CJ Maraga said, if you come back to this court with the same problems, we will do the same. When it comes to the issue of credibility, why would Jubilee insist on going on with an election process, knowing fully well that there are questions of credibility already raised? When it comes to credibility, will NASA still have the moral ground? Will NASA still have the moral ground to say that the elections were not credible, yet they participated in ensuring that the election process did not take place? That after the break.